747 of the world's finest poker players travel to the Crown Casino to compete for the largest prize in the history of the Southern Hemisphere. At stake, $7.5 million. FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions. After 5 days of fierce competition, 5 days of ups and downs, the record field has been reduced to just 7 survivors. 1 table, 6 men, 1 woman, with their sights set on over $1 million and the title Aussie Millions Champion.
I'm taking it down this year. I have a good feeling.
It's not easy to play against me.
I think I'd go for the title instead of the money.
If I don't win, you'll see the mark. I will make a mark.
This will definitely be a big win for whoever wins it.
The preliminaries are over. Tonight, the main event begins. From the Crown Casino in Melbourne, Australia, FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions. And a beautiful look at the Yarra River. It is hard by the Crown Casino. That's where we come from as we get right down to it now in these Aussie Millions. I'm Barry Tompkins, my partner, noted poker author Michael Koenig, and we are down to some very good players. Gus Hansen, of course, 4 World Poker Tour titles, one of the best around.
Andrew Black, no stranger to big final tables. He was 5th in the 2005 main event.
Christy Gaze is her first time at a final table at a $10,000 buy-in event.
And there's the surprise of the tournament, Jimmy Fricke from Mahomet, Illinois, the chip leader with more than 5 million chips.
And look at the differences. We look at our chip count between the 2 chip leaders and Andrew Black, almost 3 million chips between second and third. The blinds as we get started today, 15,000 to 30,000 with a 5,000 ante. That's Mark Karam, a young pro from Ottawa, Canada. He'll fold. Julius Coleman, already improved on his finish from a year ago, folds, as does Jimmy Fricke. And Black will throw away at 10-6. Now, Christy Gaze is looking at an ace-jack.
90.
She's on the button, and this might look suspicious to the players in the blinds, but Christy has a very good hand, 7-handed.
And Gazes made it 90,000 to Gus Hansen. Hansen, a king-6 in the big blind. He'll call. 2 players to the flop. 9, queen, 7.
Both players miss, so who wants this pot? Who's going to be willing to put chips in there with basically nothing? Christy Gazes checks her best hand. Now she's made top pair on the turn.
Check.
Gus will check.
250.
And quickly a bet of 250 from Gazes. Startles Gus Hansen.
I'm out.
And he will fold. So Christy Gazes wins our first hand here at our final table. She's playing very confidently.
And it's great to win the first hand. She'll want to win the last hand.
If you're new to the game of Texas Hold'em, here's how you play. Each player is dealt 2 down cards. Then players decide whether to call, raise, or fold. If 2 or more players remain, the community cards are dealt. The first 3 are called a flop, and they're followed by a round of betting. Next comes the turn card, more betting, and finally, the river card. What makes it no limit is that a player can bet all his or her chips at any time. This is called an all-in. In this case, players show their cards, and in all cases, the best 5-card hand wins and takes the pot. Christy Gazes now up over $1 million in chips, trying to become the first woman to win the Aussie Millions.
Picking on the boys already?
Well, there's no one else to pick on at this table.
You owed her that one.
You're a man, not a boy, baby.
Thank you, honey.
Boy, can't you just feel the love?
She just called you a man baby there.
Gus is just auto, baby. When you see Gus, you just have to say hi, baby. Can't help it. Sexiest poker player alive, so.
It's funny, whenever I see Gus Hansen, the first thing that comes to mind is shave and a haircut.
3-6 for Jimmy Fricke, suited. He'll raise to 90,000. Gazes will fold, and so will Vogel. Action now on Gus Hansen. Looking down at the ace-9 offsuit.
The big stacks generally try to avoid each other, but Karam folds, and now it is our two leaders, Fricky and Hansen, going to the flop.
Edge to Hansen. Pair of deuces and a 10 on the flop. Check from Hansen. Fricky, 150.
A little stab at the pot with his 6-eye, seeing if Gus has any interest in this hand. There's his answer.
Yep. He's going to raise 250.
Now, Fricky certainly wouldn't call here for value, but he might call to try to take this pot away on the next street. Fricky has a whole bunch of chips, but so does Hansen. And he does call. And again, it's not because he thinks his 6 is leading. If a good scare card like that right there, that king of clubs, comes out, Fricky might try to represent, but Hansen's not going to let him. He's reaching for chips.
Fricky looking it over, trying to figure Hansen out, which nobody's been able to do. 465,000, and Fricky will fold.
Fricky made a very advanced play calling the raise on the flop, and Hansen made an even deeper play betting when that king came. We're seeing some very high-level poker.
Gus Hansen will take down a valuable pot. Jimmy Fricky finished 22nd in the Caribbean Adventure just before coming here to Australia.
He does well in events near the equator.
I think that's it. Andrew Black will fold. Gazes will fold. So too will Vogel. Now Gus Hansen with an ace-jack, another playable hand.
That's right.
110,000. Mark Karam folds. Coleman squeezing out an ace-queen.
Coleman's a little short. Might be the time to move.
I'm all in.
He's going all in.
And Fricky looks down, finds pocket tens. He will certainly want to play. The question is, does he want to call or raise?
I call.
He will just call. Now it's back to Gus Hansen. It'll cost him almost 600,000 more.
Just change one of the cards when I look at that.
I don't object.
Wait a minute. Let me have a say in this.
We each get to change one.
Hey, I don't mind it. We can do that.
Hansen folds.
Go ahead.
Coleman's tournament life is on the line, but this is unfamiliar territory for Jimmy Fricky. He's actually ahead going to the flop.
And has not been a front runner at all during this event. So Coleman, very successful in business in Australia. And successful on this flop.
Top pair.
Club too.
Plus, he's got the nut flush draw with the ace of clubs. Tremendous flop for Coleman. Fricky looking for a 10 that's not a club.
Ooh, that's 3 more.
Jack of spades on the turn.
That's like a gin card for you.
That gives Fricky a few more outs. Now a 9 will complete a straight for him, so long as it's not a club.
Still needs a lot of help. There's a club. That gives the flush to Coleman, and Coleman will double up through Fricky to the joy of his family. His wife Ann, his son Jake on hand, and Dad will live to play another day. On the other hand, Jimmy Fricky will lose the chip lead. We'll see how he responds. Our final table of the Aussie Millions. We're coming back right after this.
Is he bluffing? I think he's trying to bluff me here. I bet that ace hit. What is he thinking? What is he trying? When the ace came off on 4th Street, he played with his chips. 13 to 1, 12 to 1, 16 to 4 to 1, 8 to 2. Makes my 2 pair good. Unless I'm drawing dead. I like my chances. I'm all in. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
We welcome you back. This is the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions here in Melbourne, Australia. Let's take a look at our chip count. Gus Hansen has assumed the chip lead over Jimmy Fricky. A little distance between him and Andrew Black. Karam and Vogel on the short stacks. Well, Michael, 7 players at our final table, but 2 right now are dominant. Gus Hansen and Jimmy Fricke. 2 very different players, 2 very different mindsets. What about Gus Hansen?
Well, he's been here before. Not specifically the final table of the Aussie Millions, but big money, major tournaments. He knows how to win. It has been a long dry spell, however. This is Gus Hansen's chance to get back on top of the poker world.
And then how about the kid, Jimmy Fricke?
Fricke tells us money doesn't matter to him. It's the title he's after. We're going to see if the television lights and the world-class competition makes him change his game.
One of these 7 players will walk away with a check for 1.5 million Australian dollars, just about 1.2 million American dollars. Karen folds over to Coleman.
Raise.
Julius Coleman, pocket 9s.
First raise to 100,000.
Coleman will make it 100,000. Andrew Black will fold. Christy Gazes folds. Vogel will fold. Now Gus Hansen. 10-7.
Hansen loves to play these suited connector type hands. First of all, he has a ton of chips, so calling here is not a problem. But also, it's the kind of hand where if he spikes well on the flop, he knows he can crack that man, Julius Coleman.
He does call. So 2 players to the flop. 3, 4, 6 on the flop.
It's a great flop for Coleman. No picture cards, no overcards to his 9, but Hansen has an inside straight draw and 2 overcards, and he's reaching for chips. He's going to put pressure on Coleman.
130,000 is the bet from Gus Hansen. And now Coleman.
I'm all in.
All in. So Coleman boldly pushes in.
You will win.
And that's going to be good enough. As Hansen folds and Coleman comes up with another big win for him. And again, his family, needless to say, absolutely thrilled with what's going on. Well, Julius is Australia's last hope. He's the senior citizen at the table, trying to bring the title back down under.
I'm Julius Coleman. I'm from Melbourne. 55 years since I came out from Poland as a kid. Does that make me the oldest in the tournament? I think it is. I was a lawyer and became a funds manager. It started off in 1975. I've been a lawyer for about 6 or 7 years. A lot of my clients got hurt in car accidents. They'd get money, they'd lose the money. So I didn't want them to lose the money. I told them they should buy a flat. In 1975, I bought a flat and put the names of 3 of these kids on the title. The flat cost $4,000. The rent was $8 a week. 20-something years later, we owned 55 shopping centres, and instead of collecting $8 a week rent, we were collecting $3 million a week rent, and instead of giving it to 3 investors, we're distributing it to 10,000 investors. I was absolutely certain I'd be intimidated, and I haven't been. I was absolutely certain I'd be completely nervous and disoriented under lights and at the table, and when they put you in front of everybody, and I wasn't. I've come up with a plan for a couple of the people I've been playing with. I've gone through with those plans a couple of times. They've worked. That's made it fun. So I'm loving it, just having such a ball.
Barry, a lot of poker players talk about how they're not playing for the money, they're playing for the title. Julius Coleman is a great example. Not only is he playing for the title, but if he does win, all the winnings will go to a charity for underprivileged children.
Yeah, it's a great story. Action folds to Christy Gazes with an ace-queen suited. She raises to 100,000. Now Gus Hansen, pair of 9s.
He could smooth call here, but that doesn't seem like Gus Hansen to me. I expect him to raise.
I got about $1 million, a little over $1 million.
And in fact, Gus wants to know how much Christy Gazes has left.
Counting out a raise here. And he will raise to 380,000. Coleman will fold now to Christy Gazes.
I'm all in.
And she's going to go all in. So that $1 million is now out there.
625.
Gus Hansen taking a long look.
And I thought Christy Gazes' move did not look very confident. I expect him to call.
Well, I guess it's not time for great laydowns. I should have at least 18%.
Gus makes the call.
You got anything?
Hansen is actually the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, I have 2 9s.
So Christy Gazes now, with her tournament life absolutely at stake here, staring down one of the best players in the world.
I really hate to put my money in like that, but I should have waited. Could have waited, but I don't feel like it.
That's not a confident line.
Getting the 9-4s.
I think you have to play that hand.
I think so. It's very. I've gone broke so many times in big tournaments with that stinking hand, though. Late. It's not a hand I really like that much, but we shall see.
Looking for 3 hearts, an ace, or a queen. She gets 1 heart, but
about right.
that's not so good.
Hansen has increased his lead here. Christy Gazes has less than a 30% chance of surviving, and it's worse now with 1 card to come. Christy Gazes needs an ace or a queen, otherwise she will finish in 7th place.
Down to the final card, perhaps, for Christy Gazes. It is
everyone.
a 4 of spades, and Christy Gazes will be eliminated by Gus Hansen. You can see he has increased his chip stack to over 6 million. Christy Gazes, 7th place, 220,000 Australian. Still, pretty good payday, but Gus Hansen putting distance between himself and the rest of the field. .net Aussie Millions here in Melbourne, Australia. Gus Hansen solidifies his chip lead as to Christy Gazes, 7th place with no regrets.
I may have mucked it, but I can't keep laying down. I gotta gamble. I only had $1 million, so against Gussie, I was hoping for a flip. I feel okay. What are you gonna do? It's first 10K final table I've made, so I feel really good about the way I played in general.
Gus Hansen over 6 million in chips now. 6 players remaining.
And the 2 people happiest about Christy Gazes' exit, that man, Mark Karam, and Hans Martin Vogel, the 2 short stacks. They just moved up the pay ladder. But Gus goes right back to work, raising with a 3-deuce suited.
Jimmy Fricke looking at an ace-jack now to Hansen's deuce tray. And he will call. That'll get Black out, Vogel out. So our 2 chip leaders once again facing each other heads up to the flop. There is a little pair for Hansen.
Hansen raised before the flop. I expect him to bet on this flop.
And he bets 140,000.
That's actually a suspiciously small bet, and Fricke might think that Hansen's trying to buy this pot. Although we see that Hansen is actually a 4-1 favorite going to the turn. Fricke does indeed call.
To the turn, it's a queen of diamonds. Hansen still with a big edge, despite having just a pair of 3s with a deuce kicker.
About the only thing Gus Hansen can beat right now is a hand like ace high. He is in fact leading, but he has the courage to bet out.
330,000 to Jimmy Fricke.
I don't see how Jimmy Fricke calls here. His call on the flop showed me that he wanted to see if Gus Hansen was serious, and I believe he's got his answer. No, he's calling.
Wow. Jimmy Fricke not playing by the book, I'll tell you that. And there he catches on the river.
Now will Gus Hansen continue to bet? I mean, you talk about scare cards. You're sitting there with bottom pair. Everything else on the board beats you if your opponent has any piece of the flop. The only way Gus Hansen wins this hand, of course, is to fire, and he does.
770,000 to Jimmy Fricke.
Oh, and Fricke now with top pair on the river's got a call.
I have no idea how I got to this decision with his hand.
He called all the way with nothing. Now he's actually made a hand.
Now that I have, can I fold?
Fricke thinking it over, looking into the face of a champion. He calls.
Fricky's going to win a pot with close to $3 million in it.
Is that pair 3?
This guy continually gets a bunch of chips involved with very little long-term positive expectation and comes out a winner at the end.
And he escapes this hand, thus he becomes the new chip leader. He's a guy who's established an aggressive style of play, and it's a style of play that has many players talking about it.
Jimmy Freaky.
Freaky.
Jimmy. Well,
Jimmy, what can I say?
he's a young, aggressive player.
He's gotten extremely lucky this tournament.
I mean, he's a doll, very sweet kid, and he can play as good as anyone, if not better.
I'm exciting for the TV. I'm Jimmy Fricky, and I'm from Mahomet, Illinois. I used to play a lot of games like Magic the Gathering and some role-playing games and, you know, stuff that nerds play. I am a nerd. And eventually, a lot of my other friends started getting into poker. I wanted to get really good at it because when I really want to focus on something, I want to be the best. Actually, coming into this tournament, I told someone I'm probably better than 95% of the people in the field. People may think I'm being arrogant, but that's why I came here.
Fricky will add to his stack.
Fricky's been playing a lot of pots and playing them effectively.
That just shows you where No Limit is going and how the game is changing and what kind of competition that we got coming.
Jimmy Fricky certainly doesn't lack confidence, and at this point, he doesn't lack chips either.
Not the shine retiring type. Now let's see if Gus can recover and shake off that bad beat that was administered to him by Fricky on the last hand.
Plot thickens.
Now the plot does indeed thicken. Now Gus has got to be like a cornerback here. He's just got to forget what happened. The blinds, incidentally, now 20 and 40,000 and a 5,000 ante. Folding around to Julius Coleman with an ace-10.
Raise.
He will raise to 100,000. Fricky will fold. And now Andy Black squeezing out an ace-queen suited. And he'll call. So two players to the flop. And there is an ace. This could get Coleman in a whole heap of trouble here, I would think.
Absolutely. Black checks around to Coleman, expecting the pre-flop raiser to make a continuation bet.
150.
Which he will do. He'll bet 150,000. And Black, right behind him, raises to 350.
This is a tough decision for Julius Coleman, but he's got to ask himself, why does Andy Black like his hand so much? Remember, Black was in the big blind, and Coleman is going to call. I think this is a little bit of a loose call here, Barry. Andy Black was so quick with that raise there, and remember, there's no flush draw. There's no real straight draw out there.
To the turn, a deuce of hearts, no help to either player.
5.
And Black will bet 500,000. Now what does Coleman do?
Well, he liked his hand on the flop. That deuce should change nothing. So, yeah, he's reaching for chips. I could see him calling, but I also could see him raising all in. And if he does call, he'll only have slightly more than 700,000 left.
Having a lot of trouble getting away from that ace. He will call. 500,000. That'll make him very short stacked. And a 5 on the river. Black checks. Coleman checks. Black will win the hand. And Julius Coleman now officially one of the short stacks at the final table. And Ann and Jake Coleman, of course, for the first time, kind of shake their heads and say, what are you going to do? His dad lost a big one there.
Obviously had you out kicked there.
Well, Andrew Black will finally get on the board. A confidence boost for a man who doesn't have great final table history. We'll be back. Welcome back to the 2007 Aussie Millions. You know, aside from setting the standard in hotel and casino excellence, the Crown offers some of the finest shopping in all of Melbourne. From Prada to Versace to Louis Vuitton, there's something for everyone. Well, there's something for only one person here amongst these six at our final table, and that is 1.5 million Australian dollars, just about 1.2 million American dollars. Gus Hansen looking at a King 5 suited. Gus has not had the best of it lately. This looks like he's counting out a raise, and he will raise to 120,000. Action folds around to Hans Martin Vogel. He is one of our short stacks. Pair of jacks immediately all in.
265,000 chips more to Gus Hansen.
Okay, I've never laid down this hand.
It's Queen 7.
It's in that range. 265.
So Hansen does in fact call.
And I have a king with it.
Gus Hansen felt he was pot committed here, but this is a great situation for Hans Martin Vogel as the short stack gets the last of his chips in, nearly as a 7-3 favorite going to the flop.
So here we go to the flop. Two players, Vogel, who's got everything in there, and Hansen. 6-8-10 on the flop.
So far, so good for the German.
Yep, big edge for him.
Hansen looking for a king on the turn.
It looked big.
It was paint, you know. That was pretty good. You like paint.
But it was a painted lady, and that's not so good. So we come to the river, big edge for Vogel. It's a 4, and Vogel will double up through Gus Hansen. 820,000 in that pot.
Gus Hansen, 2 hands in a row, has been a fairly generous contributor.
Yeah, he has returned the chip lead to Fricky.
But Hansen is sort of like the Danish little engine that could. I don't expect him to stop chugging.
Now Mark Karam with a king jack, and now Mark Karam's going to go all in. Been very quiet so far. Fricky won't challenge him. Vogel won't challenge him.
There's a policeman left.
Hansen
Looks pretty
with
bad.
an ace-9.
It looks pretty bad.
Well, if he could call the short stack Vogel with a king 5, surely he will call with the ace-9 here, Barry.
I don't mind the race, Gus.
Hansen fingering the chips.
I was gonna call. Making me sweat.
So Hansen still making up his mind here. It would be uncharacteristic for him not to call, I would think.
I don't want to sell one more time.
And he does.
Hope you have like Jack 9 or something. Oh.
And Karam kind of looks at what he perceives to be bad news, and it could be, although it's relatively close here.
Hansen, in fact, is close to a 6-4 favorite going to the flop.
On the flop, 5-8-10.
Hansen takes a 3-1 lead going into the turn. Karam is looking now for a king or a jack.
It is a 9 of diamonds.
Karam picks up additional outs here. A 7 or a queen will complete a straight. So he's looking for those cards or a king or a jack. Otherwise, it's back to Canada.
And here is the river. It is a 4, and Gus Hansen has eliminated Karam.
Let's go, Gus.
Mark Karam finishing in 6th place. Good payday. And another knockout for Gus Hansen.
Oh,
I guess I'm trying to knock out all 6 players.
down with it. You're going a bit slow.
For Gus Hansen, 2 down, 4. Welcome back to the Crown Casino here in Melbourne, Australia, where someone will walk away with 1.5 million Australian dollars, about 1.2 American. Will it be Jimmy Fricky? He's our chip leader right now. Gus Hansen still there, 4,500,000 and change in chips, and everybody else chasing. Back to the action here. 5 players remaining. Jimmy Fricky, youngster from Illinois. He folds.
And that rocked me cradle.
Andrew Black with a king
Raise.
jack will raise.
110.
110,000. Vogel gets out of the way. Now Gus Hansen with a queen 10. He'll make the call. Julius Coleman gets out of the way. 2 players to the flop, Hansen and Black. Slight edge to Black here. Jack, deuce, 9 on the flop.
Big action flop here. Black top pair, but Hansen open-ended straight draw and first to act.
Gus will bet 140,000.
Andrew Black makes the two-handed splash call.
And quickly, I might add. To the turn. Another jack.
Well, Gus Hansen likes to try to bully his opposition. We know, however, no matter how much Gus Hansen bets, Andrew Black is going nowhere.
And Hansen bets 330,000. And Black, hand on his head, although I'm sure his decision is made.
Well, it's not really that clear if he should call or raise here.
Call.
He does call. And now going to the river, Gus Hansen can only hit an 8 for a straight. The king would fill up Andrew Black.
And here is the river. It's a 4, and Andrew Black now in just a great position. Now what will Gus Hansen do? He's fired twice. He checks.
Million.
Andrew Black, 1 million chips.
Gus Hansen will certainly have to fold here after inspecting his manicure.
And he will let it go. And Andrew Black picks up a very good pot. The nails are still there. That's about the only good news out of that hand for Hansen. Well, the gap now between Andrew Black and Gus Hansen has narrowed to the point that they are just about even.
Both of them trail Fricky by about 2 million.
Action will start with Gus now, and he's got a pair of 6s. Figure out what to do.
Oh, and Julius Coleman has folded out of turn. That's the second time he's done it this tournament. That could be a penalty. Brett Jones, the tournament director, will have a decision to make. We'll have to see how he handles it. In the meantime, Hansen raises
to 120,000. And now Hans-Martin Vogel with an ace-queen suited.
In the big blind. I think Vogel needs to push here.
He is going to raise to 485,000.
Hansen has taken a number of big hits to his stack, and the problem with the pair of 6s, if Hansen were facing an overpair, he would be a 4-1 underdog. He doesn't know that he's actually leading, and he folds.
So Hansen gets away. A good win for Vogel as to Julius Coleman.
I'm very sorry, Julius. I have to award you a time penalty away from the table. It will be for the rest of this level, which is approximately 10 minutes' time.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Sorry about that, Julius.
No, I think that's good.
It's a bit more than that.
Julius Coleman failed to heed the warning he was given, and a terrible time to serve a 10-minute penalty.
So Julius Coleman will take a little break, and so will we. You're watching the Aussie Millions. We welcome you back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions. While you're looking right now at Julius Coleman, he is spending a little quality time with his family. He still has more than 8 minutes remaining on his penalty for acting out of turn. Before we get back to our final table, let's take a moment right now for another lesson in how to speak Australian. Mike?
Today on Down Under Dictionary, the word is cackleberry.
Cackleberry.
Cackleberry. Is that like the American version of huckleberry?
Somebody that talks too much?
Funny?
Could you use it in a sentence?
What's a cackleberry? I don't know.
I don't know what a cackleberry is.
A cackleberry is like it's like a cactus in the desert.
Cackleberry. Noun, an egg.
Egg. Okay. Well, you Aussies got some weird terms.
Bite your bum.
What?
Bite your bum.
Bite your bum?
No.
No.
Yeah.
That sounds like a sexual term that can't really be talked about on camera.
Bite your bum. Bite your bum.
Is that like kiss your butt?
I imagine that probably is something along the way of this, shut your mouth.
Bite your bum. Be quiet.
So I got that one. Yep.
So just bite your bum and have some scrambled cackleberries. Back to the action. 4 players at our final table now, and the reason for that, of course, is that Julius Coleman is sitting out some time.
He will, however, have to keep posting his blind. You see it sitting there in front of his stack and the antes.
Action folds to Hans-Martin Vogel. Jack 8 suited.
I'm all in.
All in.
And I like this play, Barry. Vogel knows he only has to get past one player, Hansen.
So far, that's a very bad card for you.
This is actually a very brave play by Vogel. 4th place pays 80,000 US more than 5th place. A lot of guys would just put it into neutral, wait for that short stack Coleman to be eliminated. Vogel's playing for the win here. He's trying to pick up nearly 100,000 free chips.
I think it's a tad bit light.
So Gus Hansen will fold, and Hans-Martin Vogel will take in almost 100,000 chips. So while he feasts at our final table, looks like Julius Coleman is having a feast of his own.
Around the corner, when those chips are in front of him, they actually look in front of him. And done it twice, shouldn't do it, deserves a penalty. And now I'll eat.
Well, you take your punishment and you have a sandwich.
Julius Coleman displaying a really good attitude about this, Barry. I know a lot of people would be throwing a tantrum at this point. He has dealt with this with a lot of class, a real sportsman.
Well, and a guy that's been successful away from the poker table, and he's carried that success onto the poker table, and you can see why. Fricky is 6'5", and he'll play. Raises to 120,000. Black folds, Vogel folds, and the action goes to Gus Hansen. Hansen with a little pair.
And four-handed, that little pair is going to look huge to Gus Hansen. He'll certainly want to see a flop.
Makes the call. And we'll see a flop between Hansen and young Jimmy Fricky. And there's another 5 for Hansen. And that might embolden Fricky.
It might. And, boy, it surprises me there with 3 hearts on the board that Gus Hansen is willing to check his set of 5s. Fricky does his business for him, though, betting out.
175,000, the bet by Jimmy Fricky, right into the wheelhouse of Gus Hansen.
Gus has 2 choices, obviously, call or raise. I like raising here. Again, Hansen doesn't know that Fricky doesn't have a heart, and he does not want to give a free card. There's the raise.
500,000.
Now, if you're Jimmy Fricky with bottom pair and a 6 kicker, that's the right play. Throw it away.
Yep, Hansen will win the hand, and that gets him right back on track. So Gus Hansen, the old veteran, takes a little bite out of the big stack of Jimmy Fricky. We're coming back.
We play for big pots, small stakes, and the chance to say, read 'em and weep. For the weekends, the all-nighters, and the lunch hour. We play for the legends and for the unknowns who dream of winning it all. For the bad beats and the pocket kings we sometimes have the sense to fold. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Some of the best poker players in the world coming to the Crown Casino, all looking to make a little history of their own. The field now down to 5 players, but only one will be the Aussie Millions champ.
Should I give the fans what they want?
This is the Aussie Millions, and here's where we stand. We began the final table with 7 players. We're down to 5. Jimmy Fricky, though, looking over his shoulder at Gus Hansen and Andrew Black. Creeping up on him. The short stack right now is Julius Coleman. He had to sit for 10 minutes, but he's back.
And with the blinds at 30 and 60,000 with a 5,000 chip ante, he can't sit around and see a lot of hands. He'll have to make a move.
Yeah, he started this hand with only 570,000 chips. Action folding around to Gus Hansen. Hansen looks at a king 10 suited.
And from the small blind, I expect him to play. He's raising.
Raises 565,000.
And apparently Gus Hansen has counted down Julius Coleman's stack. That will be enough to put him all in. Looks like he wants to call.
You robbed me of the ability to say all in. I call.
He does call. Ace little, he had to go, as you said, at some point, and why not now?
Well, this is actually a pretty good spot for the big blind Coleman. He has the best hand. Not a huge favorite, but his ace high is the favorite going into the flop.
And here comes the flop. 10-8 jack.
Gus Hansen has assumed the lead with middle pair.
Not good.
Coleman looking for an ace or running cards for a straight or flush.
Ann and Jake looking on, and not a lot of hope in the eyes there.
This could be the last two cards for Australia's remaining player.
It's a 9.
Well, now there's a chance here for a split. If a 7 comes, both players will have a straight. They'll play the board. Queen's no good because that'll give Hansen a king-high straight, but Coleman's looking for an ace.
Coleman with his tournament life on the line. Last card is a 7. We're going to get a split.
You know, Barry, they say ties are like kissing your sister. This is actually one of the most beautiful cards Julius Coleman could have hoped for.
Well, they say the longest journey begins with but a single step. Maybe that's step 1.
That step may have saved Julius Coleman about 100,000 Australian dollars, the difference between 5th and 4th place. We'll see if he can turn that bit of good luck into a charge up the leaderboard.
Action folds here to Hans-Martin Vogel with an ace-9. And he's going to raise to 210,000. Hansen folds. So does Coleman. Now Fricky, king-jack.
He's in the big blind. He already has 60,000 posted. It will cost him another 150,000 to call.
Oh, and he's going to re-raise, and that likely is going to put Vogel all in. It will. So here we go. Fricky and Vogel.
Familiar territory for our chip leader, Jimmy Fricky, trailing going into the flop.
No respect.
He's been in this situation before.
Yeah, there's a reason he's not getting respect.
You've earned it, but you've earned it, but nobody seems to be listening.
You see, our odds calculator has figured Fricky to have a 42% chance to win. That actually is off. That should be about 89% at this point.
The way he's been going. To the flop. 8, 9, 5.
Great flop for Vogel. He makes top pair. 3-1 favorite going to the turn. Fricky looking for a king or a jack.
We go to the turn. It's a queen.
That was scary.
Yeah. It was scary because Fricky's looking for paint. A king, jack, or now a 10 to complete a straight.
And now to the river. He did it again!
My goodness.
And Hans-Martin Vogel will be eliminated in 5th place by Jimmy Fricky, who has done it on the river yet another time.
Broke my streak of knocking people out.
We have a new Terminator in Australia, and he's a kid from Illinois.
Jimmy Fricky making a career on the river. 7 players began the day with visions of gold on their minds.
I'm claiming to win.
But for some, those dreams quickly turned to disappointment.
Good luck, everyone. Good luck.
We're now down to our final 4 survivors.
Plot thickens.
Can these 2 pros withstand the charge from this unknown upstart?
No respect.
Or will this local bring the crown back to his homeland?
Sick.
For Michael Koenig, I'm Barry Tompkins. We'll see you next week as the final tape.